Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin. Long ago, before we knew where oceans could hide, we gazed at the icy moon Europa and thought only of cold silence. From afar it looked like a frozen pearl, smooth and pale, circling Jupiter like a quiet thought. But beneath its cracked white shell lies something the eye can't see, a deep ocean locked away under ice so thick it could bury mountains. Scientists believe that under all that frozen stillness liquid water moves, not in rivers or puddles, but in vast, sleeping waves, an entire sea beneath the crust. Europa's surface is hard and bitter, marked with dark lines where the ice has split and shifted, like scars left behind by a restless dreamer. These cracks aren't just signs of age, they might be signs of something living, or at least something stirring below. Imagine lying beneath blankets so heavy you could never rise, but still feeling the warmth of a slow, secret fire. That's what keeps Europa's ocean from turning to stone. The moon's heart is pulled and pressed by Jupiter's enormous gravity, flexing and kneading it like dough. This pressure makes heat, just enough to melt the inner ice, letting water flow deep below the frozen skin. It's called tidal heating, and it may be the reason Europa's hidden sea remains liquid, even though the sun barely touches it. This warmth doesn't boil or bubble, whispers. It hums gently through rock and salt water, keeping the ocean asleep but alive. No sunlight reaches that buried sea. If you were a fish, drifting in Europa's dark waters, you would never know the colour blue, or the shine of day. But you might feel the soft pulse of heat rising from the core, or taste minerals in the water that come from the rocky floor. Here on Earth, in places just as dark, deep under our own oceans, we've found strange life clinging to vents, glowing with its own gentle light, feeding not on sun but on chemistry. Could something like that be waiting on Europa? Maybe not fish or whales or anything with eyes, but tiny, patient things. Life that hums quietly, following rhythms older than any song. Europa is quiet, but it is not still. Its surface moves, cracks open, freezes again. Water may rise through those wounds, spraying into space in icy plumes. If that happens, it means the ocean isn't sealed forever. It breathes, in its own slow way. And where there is breath, even the slowest, faintest kind, there might be life. The Hubble Space Telescope has seen hints of these watery geysers like sighs from a sleeping world. One day a spacecraft might fly through those plumes, catch the mist, and taste the secrets within. We wouldn't have to dig, we'd only need to listen. The story of Europa begins not with proof, but with possibility. A cold moon with no light of its own might still carry the warmest hope we know, that life can rise even in the loneliest places, even without sunshine, even beneath a world of ice. Just as seeds sleep in the dirt, waiting for spring, perhaps Europa's ocean holds something waiting to be found. Not because it needs us, but because it simply is, quiet, deep and dreaming. Let's drift deeper now, not through air or cloud, but through the slow, invisible weight of time and pressure, into the place where light cannot go. Europa's ice above is just a veil, a shell pulled tight around something ancient and hidden. For billions of years, that ocean beneath has existed without a single beam of sunlight, without seasons, without sky, and yet it may still hold something that breathes. Down there, time moves differently, not in hours or days, but in the slow rhythm of water pressed by gravity, warmed by friction, shaped by silence. Imagine the floor of that ocean, not sand and coral like Earth's tropical seas, but rock and mineral, perhaps with hydrothermal vents, like the ones found on our own ocean beds. These vents are more than cracks. They are places of fire and chemistry, places where life on Earth began. Here, hot fluid rich in energy escapes from the planet's core, mixing with cold seawater in dark columns of steam. Around them, strange creatures gather, tube worms with no eyes, shrimp with no mouths, bacteria that feed on sulfur and stone. They glow faintly in the dark, not with magic, but with biology, shaped by time and survival. If life could rise here without the sun, why not on Europa? Some scientists believe Europa may have similar vents beneath its ocean, warmed by the tidal pull of Jupiter, creating zones where heat and chemical energy mix. In those quiet currents, molecules might meet and bind. They might shape membranes, build proteins, even learn to divide. Not fast, not loud, but slowly, quietly, as if the ocean itself were dreaming of life. We do not need cities, forests, or voices to call something alive. We only need motion, repetition, and the silent hunger to endure. If Europa has this, if even the tiniest cell moves through that salt water feeding on the minerals in the dark, it would be enough. It would mean we are not alone, not in spirit, and not in origin. Europa's ocean is likely salty, a mix of elements familiar and strange. Salts that come from the rocky mantle below, pulled into the water by heat and pressure. This chemistry matters. On Earth, salt is not just a flavour, it's a carrier of life, a way for cells to send messages, balance water and store energy. In Europa's sea, salt could serve the same role, giving structure to the invisible, helping molecules find each other in the dark. And though we do not yet know what lives, or if anything does, these elements are part of the story like letters waiting to be shaped into words. The ice above is not lifeless either. Cracks and ridges mark where it's been pulled and squeezed. Some of these lines stretch for hundreds of miles, long and looping like frozen rivers. Others form patterns, swirls and spirals, as if the moon itself tried to speak through the movement of its skin. These markings tell us the ocean beneath is active, pushing upward, pressing outward, reshaping the crust from below. This means Europa is not a frozen grave, but a dynamic world. And where there is motion, especially between water and rock, there is always potential. Our spacecraft have glimpsed these clues. The Galileo orbiter gave us the first close looks, showing icebergs adrift on frozen plains, evidence of past upwellings and shifts. More recently, instruments on Earth have caught hints of water plumes erupting from Europa's surface, thin and ghostly, reaching into space. If confirmed, these plumes could give us access to the ocean without ever digging, a way to taste its story from afar. NASA's upcoming Europa Clipper mission will seek these answers, flying close again and again, listening, sniffing, watching with gentle patience. It is strange to think that something so far away, something so cold, might still be a place of hope. But Europa reminds us that life is not tied only to warmth and light. It is tied to complexity, to chemistry, to balance, and if all the right ingredients come together, even in the darkest seas, life might rise, not fast, not bright, but real. Europa teaches us to look beyond the obvious, to wonder not just at stars and fire, but at cold and silence, at what breathes where no breath should be possible. Maybe the ocean is empty, maybe it is only salt and water and slow waves swaying forever without witness. But maybe, just maybe, it holds something more, something waiting not to be seen, but simply to exist. In this way, Europa becomes a mirror, not just of science but of faith, a quiet world hidden and far yet alive with possibility. Let us return slowly now to the surface of Europa, not to escape its depths, but to feel how its silence changes us. Beneath miles of ancient ice, we imagined a sea not just filled with water, but with wonder. And now we rise, holding that stillness close. The surface of Europa, brittle and scarred, does not shout like volcanoes or stormy skies. It whispers. It tells its story in frozen trails and curling ridges, like frost etching secrets on a window pane. Each line speaks of tides pulling and pushing, of cracks that open and close, of moments when the deep sea stirs and reaches upward, pressing against the crust like a forgotten dream, returning to the edge of sleep. Above, Jupiter hangs heavy in the sky, so close, so vast, that it fills a third of the heavens. Its gravity does not let go. It pulls at Europa constantly, bending its interior, stretching its bones. This movement does not tear the moon apart. It gives it warmth, not fire, but a slow heat, a friction deep inside the rock, where nothing sees but everything feels. From this quiet energy, Europa's ocean is born again each day, drop by drop, without a single flame. On Earth, we think of life as something tied to sunlight, but Europa offers another lesson, that life might rise from gravity itself, from the deep embrace of one body around another. Even now, machines are being built to fly there, not to land first, but to listen, to circle again and again, to scan the ice, to trace its scars, to catch a sigh of vapour if it escapes. These missions are not rushing, they are patient. The Europa Clipper will carry ears and eyes crafted by careful hands, tuned to hear what we cannot. A change in magnetism, a flicker in ultraviolet, a subtle difference in reflected light. Each reading will be a page, and together they may form a chapter. But Europa will not yield its story quickly. It does not care for urgency. It teaches waiting, watching, wondering. And one day perhaps we will land, not with flags or footsteps, but with tools that melt through the ice like gentle questions. A probe, sinking slowly, measuring salt and pressure and warmth. A robot swimmer gliding through the dark beneath, listening for chemistry, for motion, for life. Not to disturb, but to witness. We may find only water, moving endlessly through the dark, or we may find shapes, simple, slow, quiet creatures, living without light, without sound, with nothing but the heartbeat of heat. They may not notice us, they may not need to, but knowing they are there would change everything. Because if Europa can hold life, then life is not rare, it is not fragile, it is not a miracle trapped on Earth. It is something the universe does when the conditions are kind enough, when there is water and time and just enough warmth in the cold. In that moment, Europa becomes not just a moon, but a message. It tells us that loneliness may not be the law of the cosmos, that under the ice of distant moons, in the shadows of gas giants, in places we once called dead, something may breathe, not loudly, not for us, but for itself. And even if we find nothing, the search itself is a kind of life, to send our thoughts so far, to reach into darkness with hope instead of fear. That too is part of being alive. Europa does not promise answers, but it opens questions that move us. It offers silence so vast it becomes a mirror, reflecting not just what might live out there, but what stirs inside us when we dare to wonder. Beneath its frozen crust, the ocean dreams. And so do we. Far from the fires of Earth, across the cold black sea of space, there is a recipe still being written, an alien blend of water, salt and stone. On Europa, beneath its glowing white crust, the ocean sways silently in the dark. And within that ocean, scientists believe, may lie ingredients older than memory. Not just water, but salts, hidden flavours of a world that has never seen the sun. This is not the salt we sprinkle on food or find in shallow waves. This is the salt of time, drawn from the bones of a moon that has never known spring. In this silent sea, chemistry dances slowly, patiently like a lullaby, stretched over billions of years. On Earth, we know that salt is more than taste. It is a language that cells understand, a bridge between atoms, a key that unlocks motion, balance, and life. In our own oceans, salt comes from rock. Rain falls on mountains, breaks stone into whispers, carries those whispers to the sea. But on Europa, there is no rain, no rivers, no wind. The salt there must rise from below, from rock pressed by a heat, from minerals stirred by tides, from an unseen crust warmed by the pulling of Jupiter's massive gravity. This is tidal kneading, a slow friction that turns motion into heat, melting ice from beneath and pulling stone into water. That mix of the warmth and the mineral may be the closest thing to a recipe for life in the dark. If Europa's ocean is salty, and it likely is, then it is also alive in a way. Not with beating hearts or swimming things, perhaps, but with reaction and change. The salt may carry traces of sulfur, magnesium, and chlorine. It may bind with carbon, drift through heat, and split into patterns we do not yet understand, might cling to the underbelly of the ice, forming fingers and frost reaching upward like dreams from the deep. In this way, the salt becomes a map, a guide to what lies below, to what has touched rock, what has moved, and what still might. The Galileo spacecraft, which passed Europa decades ago, gave us our first clues. It tasted the moon from orbit and found signs of salt on the surface, salts that do not belong on the crust, that could only have risen from the ocean below. These are not dry minerals, they are brine brought up through cracks, frozen mid-breath as they touch the vacuum of space. Imagine that, a spray of alien ocean flung upward like a sigh, caught by the instruments built on Earth, and read like a message written in frozen ink. Those readings spoke of sodium and sulfur, but they also hinted at something more, something complex, something layered. When light hits Europa's surface, it reflects in strange ways. Parts of the crust appear darker, tinted with materials that don't match pure ice. These patches may be salt deposits, coloured by time and radiation. Over years, Jupiter's magnetic field lashes Europa with invisible wind, turning salts into colours, transforming chemistry into signal. Scientists believe these colours may reveal what the ocean holds. The purples and browns and reds might be fingerprints of sulfur compounds, of carbonates, of building blocks that could, just maybe, support life. Not proof, but possibility. And in the cold quiet of Europa, possibility is everything. No one has dipped a hand into that sea. No probe has tasted the brine directly. But the clues keep building. Ice cracks open, plumes rise, salts form on the skin of a moon that never moves fast, never speaks loudly. And every new observation brings us closer to understanding the flavours of that hidden ocean. It is not the kind of understanding that comes quickly. It is the kind that requires stillness and wonder, and the patience to hear a whisper through stone. Salt on Europa may be more than a mineral. It may be a voice. Let us drift again into Europa's ocean, not to see with our eyes, but to feel with our questions. The salts dissolved in that buried sea are more than scattered particles. They are memories in liquid form. Each one carries the signature of stone and pressure, of warmth rising from the deep, of silence stretched across millennia. These salts are born where rock meets water, where tidal heat stirs minerals loose from the core and lifts them into the cold. In those dark, pressing waters, chemistry becomes a kind of breathing, not loud, not fast, but steady. A rhythm of dissolving and binding, of drifting and meeting, repeated again and again in the hidden dark. On Earth, the ocean's salt helps life hold shape. It keeps cells from bursting or collapsing. It sends signals along nerves. It preserves and protects. In Europa's ocean, the same rules may apply. The sodium and magnesium there may cradle molecules, may help fragile chains survive long enough to link, divide, and continue. Salts are stabilizers. They keep things balanced when everything else is uncertain. And in a world without sunlight, balance may be the only path life could take. A single ion in the right place could mean the difference between a broken cell and one that holds on, quietly in the dark. Europa's salt water is not static. Tides pulled by Jupiter churn the sea, lifting and lowering entire columns of water with each orbit. This constant movement could carry chemicals from deep vents to the higher layers of the sea and back again. This mixing creates cycles, and where cycles exist, so too does the chance for life to take hold. Because life at its heart is repetition. It is the gentle insistence of molecules to try again, to rebuild, to reach. Salts may be the handrails in this process, the quiet supports that let life climb in the dark. Scientists have begun to map these invisible oceans not with eyes, but with magnetism. As Europa orbits, Jupiter's magnetic field passes through it. The salty ocean conducts electricity just enough to create a wobble in that field, a soft shift, like the moon murmuring beneath its shell. By studying this wobble, researchers have traced the depth and size of the sea, and confirmed it must be vast, deep, and brimming with dissolved minerals. This magnetic whisper is one of Europa's clearest confessions. It tells us the ocean is real. It tells us it moves. It tells us it listens. From orbit, telescopes have caught glimpses of what may be plumes, jets of water pushed up through cracks, venting into space. These plumes may carry salt from the depths, giving us a taste of the sea without digging. If we fly a spacecraft through one, we may capture grains of frozen ocean and learn what stories its salts tell. In 2012 and again in 2016, the Hubble Space Telescope observed hints of these outbursts near the southern pole. If they are real, they are delicate, barely there. But in a world of silence, even a whisper matters. The upcoming Europa Clipper will carry instruments built for this very task. It will fly low, trace the gravity, read the magnetism, and sniff the thin layer of gas that clings to the surface. Some of its sensors are designed to identify salts, sodium, chloride, sulfates. Each one a clue, each one a piece of a story still unfolding. Scientists will compare these findings to Earth's oceans, to volcanic lakes, to deep-sea vents. They will search for patterns, for signs that Europa's sea is not just salty but sustaining, that it does not merely exist, but supports the steps life needs to begin. Salt is not a source of energy by itself, but it helps energy move. It allows currents to flow, reactions to take place, membranes to form. In hydrothermal systems on Earth, salty water helps create gradients, differences in charge, pressure, or heat that life can use, like wind turning a wheel. If similar systems exist on Europa, even in simpler forms, then salt becomes a part of the machine. Not the motor, but the oil, not the spark, but the surface where sparks catch, a helper, quiet and necessary. We may never know for sure what moves beneath Europa's crust, but each line of salt on the surface, each flicker of chemistry in the data, brings us closer to the possibility. The possibility that somewhere in that cold, buried sea, a molecule folds, a cell holds together, a structure repeats, not out of will, but out of chance nurtured by balance. In that moment, the salt water becomes something more than brine. It becomes a cradle. Now, let us rise once more toward the icy ceiling of Europa's hidden world, holding in our thoughts the quiet story told by salt. This story is not loud, not painted in bright colours or roaring sound. It is a slow unfolding, a chemical lullaby carried in the stillness of a sea that has never seen a sunrise. Salt is not a symbol we often think of as sacred, yet here in the frozen dark it becomes a kind of language, a way the moon speaks through silence, through reaction, through trace minerals clinging to the edges of water and ice. It speaks not in words, but in balance. And balance, perhaps, is the beginning of all life. The salt of Europa tells us more than just what is there. It tells us how the moon breathes. It rises from the floor of the ocean through warmth made by gravity's pull, carried upwards in columns of water, drawn by motion too slow for the human eye to see. It touches the ice above, and in some places it finds a way through. Cracks form, water seeps, cold air freezes it, salt crystallizes, and then a message is left behind. A faint discoloration on the surface, a reddish hue where none should be, a pattern that hints at currents below. These marks may be Europa's only way to write, and we, from our distant world, have begun to read. Each spacecraft that visits the moon brings better eyes, more sensitive instruments, and with them our picture sharpens. We learn that some salts on the surface change colour over time, altered by radiation from Jupiter. This radiation cracks molecules apart, makes them unstable, transforms them. It is destruction, but also revelation. Through these changes, we can detect what was once hidden. We can estimate the age of the surface. We can guess how fresh a plume might be, how deep a crack has reached. And we begin to imagine what those salts would tell us if we could gather them directly, if we could hold a pinch of Europa's ocean in our hand. There is a future where this may happen. A probe, gentle and warm, might melt its way through the ice, not to conquer, but to listen. As it descends, it could sample the chemistry of each layer, measuring, recording, learning, and when it reaches the ocean, it might float, drift, taste, not search for cities or creatures, but for structure, for patterns, for molecules arranged in ways that do not happen by accident. Even the smallest hint of such order would be profound. A repeating structure, a stable shape, a signal not in sound, but in salt. And yet, even if we find nothing, no life, no cells, no gentle swimmers in the brine, the salt would still matter, because it reminds us that the universe is full of places that are not empty, places that hold the ingredients of life, even if life itself has not yet begun. These are not failures, they are invitations. Europa becomes one such invitation, a cold one, yes, but not unwelcoming. It is a world that says, here the conditions are close, here the chemistry is right. Perhaps not now, perhaps not yet, but someday in some form. Salt connects things. On Earth it connects people in meals, it preserves memory and flavour. In Europa, it may connect oceans to rock, ice to water, possibility to truth. And if one day we send a swimmer beneath the crust, a gentle explorer shaped by science and longing, it may find that the salt water carries more than minerals. It may carry time, it may carry hints of becoming, it may carry a dream. So now we leave Europa, not in distance but in thought, carrying with us the taste of its unknowns. The surface remains cold, distant, silent. But beneath, the ocean moves. And within that motion, salts drift like stars in suspension. Quiet, ancient, and waiting. Waiting not for us, but for the moment when the conditions are just enough. When heat, water, and chemistry meet once again. When the universe, in its vast stillness, gently allows something new to stir in the deep. In the quiet dark of Europa's ocean, far below its shining crust of ice, a strange question floats in the cold. Could life exist without the sun? On Earth, nearly every living thing draws its strength from sunlight, either directly or through the plants and algae that soak it in. But in the deep beneath the sea there are places so dark that no light has ever entered. And yet in these shadows life blooms. Life that glows, that feeds on chemicals, that never sees a sunrise. These creatures do not photosynthesize. They do not wait for morning. They breathe through a different rhythm, fed by the Earth's own inner heat. And if it can happen here, then maybe, just maybe, it could happen on Europa. The idea is simple and yet wondrous. On the seafloor of our own world, near cracks in the Earth's crust, there are vents that release hot fluids rich in energy. These are hydrothermal vents, and around them life gathers. Tube worms, blind shrimp, strange snails, and tiny glowing bacteria all thrive in a place with no light. Instead of sun, they use chemicals, hydrogen sulfide, methane, iron as fuel. The process is called chemosynthesis. It is slower than photosynthesis, quieter, but just as powerful. The bacteria at the base of these ecosystems build their energy from the Earth's breath, not the sky's light. And everything else feeds on them, forming communities rich and alive in total darkness. If Europa has a rocky seafloor, and if heat from tidal forces warms that rock, then it's possible, just possible, that similar vents could exist there. Heat from the moon's interior might seep into the ocean, creating pockets of warmth in the cold. And where warm rock meets water, chemicals may rise. These chemicals could feed simple life, bacteria-like creatures that use iron or sulfur as fuel. Not because it's the best way, but because it is the only way in that place. Such life would not be fast or large. It would not build reefs or forests, but it might cling to rocks, divide slowly, and glow faintly in the dark, like a whisper of biology among the minerals. Europa's ocean, sealed under ice for billions of years, would offer stability. No storms, no sudden changes, no seasons. Just cold, dark water, moving gently around heat and rock. In such a place life would not need to hurry. It could evolve slowly, repeat its patterns over time, and find a way to exist. Perhaps only a handful of species. Perhaps only one. But even that would be enough to change our understanding of where life can grow. On Earth, we have found life in places thought impossible. Inside glaciers, beneath deserts, in caves with no oxygen, inside acidic lakes. Each discovery stretches the line of what we once believed. We now know that life is not fragile. It is stubborn. It adapts. It learns how to breathe in strange ways, how to feed on dust, how to sleep through centuries. If life exists on Europa, it may be doing the same, surviving in the dark, growing so slowly we can barely imagine it, but growing all the same. The idea of glowing life beneath Europa's crust is not a fantasy. It is a question shaped by science. It is supported by patterns we've already seen, by deep-sea vents, by extremophiles, by chemistry that works without light. And though we do not yet have proof, every new mission brings us closer. We do not seek cities or songs. We seek a flicker, a pattern, a repetition that cannot be explained by chance, a life form not grand but present, a breath in the silence. Let's go deeper now, not just into the ocean itself, but into the idea that life does not need light to grow. Europa's buried sea may be entirely in shadow, its surface sealed tight by ice for billions of years. But even in such complete darkness, energy can still move. Beneath the crust, Europa's interior is tugged and twisted by the gravity of Jupiter, creating warmth in its rocky core. That heat seeps upward, touching the cold water with invisible fingers, creating places where temperatures rise, chemicals react, and possibilities unfold. If vents exist on Europa's ocean floor, like the hydrothermal ones we know on Earth, then those spots could be islands of energy in an otherwise frozen world. On our planet, these deep-sea vents are not rare. They rise from volcanic ridges where tectonic plates meet and part. From them flow superheated fluids, rich in minerals pulled from the mantle. In the darkness, the water glows faintly from the heat. Around these vents, life gathers, not because it is easy, but because it is possible. Entire ecosystems form, from the smallest microbe to the longest tube worm, all thriving without sunlight. Their energy source is not the sky, but the earth itself. The microbes use chemosynthesis to build food from chemicals like hydrogen sulfide. They take in poison and make nourishment, and other creatures in turn feed on them. It is a cycle that does not need day or night. Now, imagine Europa's ocean floor, barren and silent but not lifeless. Imagine small rocky vents pushing heat into the cold sea. Around these vents, chemicals swirl, sulfides, iron, ammonia. Perhaps in that churning water there are bacteria-like organisms clinging to stone, feeding not on sugar or sunlight, but on pure chemical exchange. They do not move quickly, they do not form schools or swarms, but they divide, they endure, they shape their world one molecule at a time. In such a place, time feels different. A year may pass with the growth of a single colony, a lifetime lived in the curve of a grain of sand. Some of these imagined life forms might glow, not because they need to see, but because their chemistry produces light as a byproduct. On Earth, we call it bioluminescence. Deep-sea creatures use it to lure prey, find mates, or simply shine in the dark. On Europa, where no eyes may exist, glowing might be useless, or it might be the only way to sense the world. A flicker of blue here, a pulse of green there, not for beauty, but for survival. Perhaps the ocean twinkles with life we cannot see, quietly lighting the deep for no one but itself. Scientists call the potential creatures of Europa extremophiles, meaning life that thrives in extreme conditions. We have many on Earth, bacteria that live in boiling acid, or in the vacuum of space, or in pure methane. These organisms don't just tolerate extremes, they prefer them. They are adapted to pressures we would collapse under, to temperatures that would shatter us. If life on Europa exists, it too would be an extremophile, shaped not by warmth and air, but by pressure, darkness, and chemical energy. It would not look like anything we know, it would not act like anything we expect, but it might live all the same. And Europa gives it time. That ocean has been stable for perhaps 4 billion years. Time enough for life to begin, evolve, adapt, and persist. Even if the process started slowly, even if the first molecules formed and vanished over and over again, time would offer them a second chance, and a third, and 1,000 more. Life is patient. The universe is long. Where there is energy and chemistry and enough time to dance, life may learn the steps. So when we think of Europa, we must think not just of water and ice, but of energy, of the slow, deep motion of tides, of the heat that rises without flame, of the rock that offers more than foundation. It offers fuel. In this, Europa becomes more than a moon. It becomes a classroom, teaching us that life does not belong only to Earth, to sunlight, to the familiar. Life might belong wherever the rules are just kind enough, wherever heat and time agree to wait together in the dark. Now let us surface slowly, through the weightless layers of Europa's ocean, not to leave it behind, but to better understand the deep stillness we've imagined. In the dark silence beneath that frozen lid, we've wandered through possibilities of life that does not seek the sun, life that finds light in chemistry, that grows not from warmth above, but from pressure and reaction far below. The idea of such life does not come from fiction, it comes from patterns we've already seen, right here, on our own planet. Europa is far away, yes, but its lessons are close. They echo in every vent, in every glowing microbe that survives without sky. The life we hope to find on Europa will not greet us. It will not reach for us. It may not even know we exist. And still, the act of looking for it changes who we are. Because to imagine glowing creatures in the dark is to admit that life is vast, not just in form, but in patience. It is to understand that warmth is not always fire, and that light does not always come from the sun. Life may be small, may be slow, may be so simple we almost miss it. But if it is there, if one living thing drifts through Europa's black water, then everything we know about life's boundaries must stretch. The search itself is not just for Europa. It is for understanding. It is for perspective. On Earth, We often speak of life as fragile, rare, a miracle surrounded by void. But Europa whispers another truth, that life might be persistent, that it might rise wherever it can, using whatever tools it's given. Perhaps it doesn't need a perfect world, just a possible one, a world with water, with energy, with the steady rhythm of time. Europa offers all three, and though we may not yet hold evidence in our hands, the clues gather like frost, quiet and undeniable. Consider again the bioluminescent life that could exist there, not shining for beauty, but as a side effect of survival. In our own oceans, deep-sea creatures light up the dark, not because they want to be seen, but because the chemistry demands it. Reactions release photons. Those photons become light. Light becomes signal, and signal, even when unintended, becomes a way to live. On Europa, the glow might be faint. It might not even reach the ice above, but it would be real. And in its faint shimmer, we would find proof that life does not need permission. It only needs a chance. In the years ahead, our spacecraft will return. Instruments will scan the surface. They will sniff the plumes, taste the salts, measure the magnetic fields. They will search not for certainty, but for patterns, tiny repeated shapes, chemical ratios that don't make sense unless something is alive. They will search in the language of science. But beneath that, quietly, we are asking a question older than any formula. Are we alone? And Europa may answer, not with a word, but with a molecule, with a curve that repeats too perfectly, with a trace of something built, not just formed. And if that happens, even once, even faintly, we will know that life is not the exception. It is the result. It is what happens when the universe breathes. Even if we find no life, we will have listened. We will have reached across space with wonder, asking not for dominance, but for connection. We will have honoured the idea that something may exist in the dark, slow and unseen, and still be worthy of discovery. Europa does not promise life, but it promises meaning. It reminds us that to live is to wonder, to reach beyond ourselves, to light a match in the dark just to see if something glows back. And so we return to the surface, carrying nothing in our hands, but much in our minds. A vision of an ocean hidden from the stars, a belief that life does not need sunlight, only space and time, a hope that somewhere beneath the ice, in the deep cold black, something small and soft may be drifting still, alive, unseen and quietly waiting. Europa's surface is not smooth. It is carved with lines, long curling fractures that wind across the ice like veins or scars. From afar, these cracks seem like imperfections, but up close, they speak of movement, of change, of pressure building from below. The surface of Europa is not still. It stretches, pulls and splits as the ocean underneath shifts and presses against it. These marks, called lineae, are Europa's language. They are messages written in ice, recording each time the moon flexes under the grasp of Jupiter's immense gravity. Each line is a memory, a frozen echo of motion that once rippled through an ancient sea. Imagine standing on Europa, surrounded by this vast, icy plain. The horizon glows in soft, scattered light, reflected not from a sun above, but from Jupiter's own massive golden shape looming in the sky. Under your feet the ground creaks faintly, not from wind or quake, but from deep tides rising slowly below. These are not tides of water brushing gently against shores. These are tides that lift an entire ocean, that bend the moon's crust upward and down again, pulling and grinding as Europa completes its path around Jupiter. With every orbit, the pull shifts slightly, and the ice responds, cracking open, closing again, always changing. These cracks are not random. They form patterns, often repeating, sometimes stretching for hundreds of miles. Some double back on themselves, some split and rejoin, creating braided paths like frozen rivers. Inside the lines, dark material can often be seen, perhaps salt water forced up from the ocean below, or minerals drawn from the rock beneath. Whatever they are, they mark a place where the hidden sea has touched the surface. In these features, scientists see more than geology. They see evidence that the ocean is active, not sealed forever beneath still ice, but pressing against its roof, trying in its own slow way to reach the lightless sky. And sometimes, perhaps, it succeeds. At certain points, the cracks may widen just enough to release water upward. Jets of liquid that spray briefly into space freeze instantly and fall back as fine snow or ice. These geysers are invisible to the naked eye, but our telescopes have caught glimpses, flashes of vapour near Europa's south pole, subtle and fleeting, yet unmistakably real. These events tell us something profound, that Europa is breathing. Slowly, faintly, but breathing. Its ocean is not stolen. It speaks through these fractures, letting out pressure, releasing trace minerals, hinting at life's ingredients in the mist. We call this process cryovolcanism, not the fiery eruptions we see on Earth, but cold eruptions born of ice and pressure. On Europa, a volcano does not glow, it exhales, and the cracks are its lungs. Through them, we learn not just about the ocean's chemistry, but its motion. If the ocean moves, if it flows and pushes and escapes, then it is not a still dead pool. It is alive in its own quiet way, reshaping the world above it. These cracks are dangerous too. They show that the surface is unstable, fragile, a place where explorers of the future must step carefully. But they are also opportunity. If we want to understand what lies beneath, we need only look to where the surface has already opened. These fractures are not just scars, they are windows, and through them, Europa tells us a story of pressure, of a change, and of a world always on the edge of transformation. Let us trace the cracks more closely now, not just as lines upon the surface, but as pathways into Europa's inner world. These fractures are not only the product of external forces, they are a reflection of the moon's inner life. As Europa orbits Jupiter, the gravitational pull is not constant. It changes slightly with distance, with alignment, with every wobble in its elliptical path, and each shift in gravity creates tides, not only in the ocean but in the crust itself. The ice flexes, it stretches and compresses, swells and sags, like a frozen lung inhaling a breath it cannot release. Over time, this strain becomes too great, and the ice gives way. Cracks form, some are shallow, some slice deep, but each one is a sign of Europa's body responding to the slow rhythm of its orbit. What makes these cracks more than just marks is what they reveal. Along some of them, darker materials appear, bands of browns and reds, unlike the bright, clean ice around them. Scientists believe these substances are salts and minerals, perhaps drawn up from the ocean below. As pressure builds beneath the crust, it may force small amounts of liquid water upward, carrying with it a taste of Europa's inner sea. When this water reaches the vacuum of space, it freezes instantly, leaving behind chemical fingerprints. These deposits become visible signs of what lies beneath, clues that tell us not only that the ocean exists, but that it moves, reacts, participates. In certain areas, the cracks appear to have split and rejoined over time, forming what are known as chaos terrains. These are places where the ice looks shattered, jumbled, rearranged. Huge blocks of frozen crust seem to have floated, tilted, and refrozen, as if they were icebergs drifting in a slushy sea. This suggests that the ice shell is not solid all the way through. It may be thin enough in some places for the ocean to melt the underside, creating weak spots, soft areas, or even temporary lakes trapped within the crust. And where the crust is thin, it is vulnerable. It can break more easily, and in breaking it reveals more of what lies below. The cracks may also be ancient. Some may have opened and closed many times across Europa's long history. Each cycle leaves a trace, like the rings of a tree or the layers in a glacier. The surface builds a record of its own story layer by layer, fracture by fracture. By studying these patterns, scientists can estimate how often the crust moves, how fast the ocean responds, how recent or old each feature might be. This is more than geology. It is the study of time itself, of how Europa changes, remembers, forgets. And then there are the plumes. While the cracks tell us about motion and pressure, the plumes give us access to what's inside. If vapour is escaping through these fractures, then spacecraft might one day fly through the mist and collect particles without ever landing. Already, instruments have detected hints of water, possible traces of organic compounds, even signs of salts and simple molecules. Each discovery adds weight to the idea that the ocean is not locked away forever. It reaches up, even if briefly, to touch the stars. But cracks do more than release. They also receive. Material from space, dust, radiation, micrometeorites falls onto Europa's surface and can slip into these openings. This two-way exchange means that the ocean and the surface may share a quiet conversation, passing minerals, energy, even organic matter between them. Such interaction increases the chances that if life exists in the ocean, it might leave behind detectable signs at the surface. And if life does not exist yet, this ongoing exchange could help create the conditions for it to someday begin. In this way, cracks are not just damage, they are bridges. They connect the deep to the shallow, the present to the past, the silence below to the emptiness above. They show us that Europa is not a closed system. It breathes, it speaks, and in every shift of its crust, in every plume that fades into the blackness of space, it shares its quiet truth with those who listen. The cracks are its voice, and we, from far away, are beginning to hear. As we follow the last bend of Europa's cracks, we begin to see them not as mere features of ice, but as living memories of a restless world. Each line across the frozen skin carries the weight of the ocean's breath, a trace of its reach, and the press of time moving without hurry. These fractures are not frozen in stillness. They are pathways of pressure, living and dying again with every cycle of orbit, every twitch of gravity. To study them is to read Europa's journal, carved in ice and silence, stretching back across eons. One of the most beautiful ideas is that these cracks are not closed books. They are still being written. As Europa continues to circle Jupiter, tides rise and fall beneath the crust, subtly changing the landscape above. New cracks may form where none existed. Old ones may stretch farther, break wider, or shift their pattern entirely. Even as we watch from afar, the story evolves. Instruments may someday detect a change, a new plume erupting from a place once thought quiet, or a region of fresh ice unscarred and strangely smooth, hinting at recent motion from below. In that moment, the surface becomes not just evidence but witness. The future holds missions that may fly close enough to map these cracks in exquisite detail. The Europa Clipper will sweep low over the moon, scanning each feature with radar, cameras, and spectrometers. It will look beneath the surface, sensing the shape of the ice and the motion of the water beneath. It will trace the magnetic field, mapping how it shifts as Europa moves. And in these shifts, in the tiny fluctuations of signal and strength, scientists hope to find patterns, signs of hidden lakes, or of ocean currents brushing close to the shell, or even of plumes active once again. Every orbit will offer new pages of the moon's slow story. There may come a time when we land on Europa, not just to fly over, but to touch down. Perhaps it will be at a crack, one already open, already giving. A probe could drill only a little, or use heat to melt downward through thin ice reaching for the brine below. Instruments could test for salts, for organics, for compounds that should not be there unless life, or pre-life, left them behind. Not shouting answers, but whispering possibilities. And that whisper, if it comes, would echo far beyond Europa. It would mean the surface is not just a shell, but a messenger. Even if we find no life, even if the ocean is quiet, the cracks themselves still matter. They prove that Europa is not a frozen dead moon. It is active, it responds, it reshapes itself from within, and in that reshaping it reminds us that even the coldest places in the solar system can move, change, evolve. It reminds us that stillness is not always silence. That under the calm, great forces may be working, that even ice can be alive in its own slow rhythm. These fractures, these beautiful scars, do not follow the rules we expect. They curve where we would expect straight lines, they loop, twist, overlap. They resist symmetry. In their chaos, they reflect the complex dance between water, rock, and time, a dance that has played out under a roof of ice thicker than our tallest mountains, longer than all of the human memory. To witness these cracks is to be humbled. They are not broken things, they are Europa's way of becoming. So now we leave the cracks behind, not as lines on a map, but as voices of a world we are only beginning to understand. They stretch across the surface like open hands, reaching not in pain but in release. Each one tells us, I moved, I shifted, I was not still. And through that motion something inside may have stirred. Beneath the fractures lies an ocean. And within the ocean perhaps the first notes of life waiting to be heard. Far beneath the crust of Europa, where light cannot reach and silence is thick, warmth stirs in the dark. Not the kind of warmth that burns or glows, but a gentle, persistent heat that moves through rock and water like a heartbeat. This warmth does not come from a sun. It comes from within, a secret made by motion, by gravity, by the endless pull between Europa and its giant neighbour Jupiter. The warmth below zero is not a contradiction. It is a quiet miracle born from the stretching and squeezing of a moon that cannot hold still. Every orbit around Jupiter, Europa is tugged and released, pulled into new shapes by the gravity of the gas giant. This constant flexing creates friction inside the moon, and friction, though silent, generates heat. Deep within the icy shell and rocky core, molecules rub against one another, shift and press. Over time, that motion becomes warmth, soft, steady, and just strong enough to melt parts of the thick ice above the ocean. This process, called tidal heating, is not quick. It is the slow work of millions of years, a soft furnace that never flares but never fades. On Earth, we warm our homes with fire, our bodies with the sun, but Europa teaches us that warmth can be quiet, hidden, and born from movement alone. Imagine a world where the only source of heat comes from being gently stretched, again and again by the force of another world. It is not romantic, it is not dramatic, but it is enough to keep water from freezing solid, enough to allow chemistry to unfold, enough, perhaps, to let life begin. The ocean beneath Europa's crust may be heated this way from below, and perhaps even from within. The rocky core, twisted and pulled by tides, could act like a generator, slowly giving off energy. If vents exist at the seafloor, they would release this heat into the ocean in pulses, creating small warm oases in the otherwise frigid sea. And wherever warmth and minerals meet water, life has a chance to rise, not flourish, not quickly, but begin, drift, survive. The ice above responds to this hidden heat. It shifts, bends, and cracks, just like the crust of a restless planet. In some places it may thin, in others it may melt from below, creating pockets where the ocean touches the ice directly. These pockets might become gateways, places where water can rise through the cracks and burst briefly into space as plumes. The heat below causes this, not in fury but in patience, a kind of geological breathing, pushing out sighs of vapour that tell the story of the ocean without ever needing to open it wide. We often think of cold as the absence of life, but Europa asks us to reconsider. What if cold is simply a cover? What if underneath, warmth moves quietly, building the stage for something new? The warmth below zero is not felt with skin. It is measured in motion, in resistance, in chemistry still willing to happen. And that willingness, that potential, is what makes Europa's ocean a place of hope. Tidal heating is not unique to Europa. Other moons, like Io, Enceladus and Ganymede, also show signs of it. But Europa is different. Its size, its orbit, its distance from Jupiter, all combine to create a perfect tension. Not too much, not too little, just enough to keep the ice from locking the ocean forever, just enough to let water flow in the dark, just enough to make us wonder if somewhere, in that black, quiet sea, something tiny and alive may be warming itself in the slow breath of a moon that cannot help but move. Let us follow the warmth, not with our bodies but with our questions, as it moves through Europa's interior like a hidden river of energy. This warmth, born of tidal motion, does more than melt ice. It reshapes a world. Deep within Europa's rocky mantle, the pressure from Jupiter's gravity pushes and pulls in steady, silent cycles. These gravitational tides are invisible, but their effects ripple through stone and ice alike. They bend the crust, knead the core, and create friction between layers. It is through this slow grinding that heat is made, not in flashes or bursts, but in a constant, patient murmur that never sleeps. This warmth seeps outward, rising through the layers of Europa's icy shell. It does not travel in straight lines. It flows where resistance is weakest, curling through fractures, pooling in softer regions, pressing against the underside of the frozen ceiling. In some places, the heat is strong enough to melt the base of the ice completely, creating slushy pockets where water can collect. In others, it simply warms the edges of ice crystals, loosening them, letting them slip past each other more easily. This subtle change in structure allows the ice above to shift, to crack, to drift slowly over time like a frozen sea of glass. Scientists believe the thickness of Europa's ice may vary greatly. Some models suggest it could be tens of kilometers thick in most places, but only a few kilometers or less, where tidal heating is strongest. In those thinner regions, the ocean comes close to the surface, and the warmth below plays its most important role. It opens pathways, weakens barriers, and allows chemical exchanges between the sea and the crust. This interaction is key because it allows the energy from within to meet the ingredients from above. It allows Europa to become not just a holder of water, but a mixer of life's potential. On Earth, similar processes occur beneath glaciers and ice sheets. In Antarctica, lakes have been discovered buried beneath miles of ice, kept liquid not by sunlight, but by geothermal heat. These lakes are isolated, ancient and still. Yet even in their sense, scientists have found signs of microbial life. Simple organisms that survive without photosynthesis, feeding instead on the minerals released from the rock below. Europa's ocean may be like these lakes, only deeper, darker and older, and the warmth that keeps it flowing may be the same kind of gentle fire, soft and steady, but full of meaning. Tidal heating also creates movement within the ocean itself. As heat rises from the core, it creates currents, slow, looping motions of water that carry warmth, minerals, and nutrients from place to place. These currents could help distribute energy throughout the ocean, preventing it from freezing solid and encouraging the kind of circulation that life needs. On Earth, ocean currents shape climates, feed coral reefs, and sustain vast migrations. On Europa, they might support tiny ecosystems tucked into pockets of warmth around the seafloor. Life, if it exists there, would not be spread evenly. It would gather in the eddies of heat and chemistry, in places where conditions are just right. Some scientists think that the rocky seafloor of Europa may be active, not just warm but geologically alive. There may be faults, ridges, and even underwater volcanoes powered by the heat of tidal motion. If true, this would be a game changer. Volcanic activity would release gases and minerals into the ocean, providing the raw materials that life can use. Just as on Earth's seafloor, hydrothermal vents could form, creating rich environments where temperature and chemistry come together in unique, life-supporting ways. These environments do not need light. They need only time, warmth, and the gentle churn of tides. And all of this, all the melting, the movement, the slow transformation of stone into energy, happens without a single spark. There is no sun beneath Europa's crust, no flame, no lightning, only motion, only pressure, only the ancient rhythm of orbits and gravity, of pull and release. From this, the warmth below zero is born, a warmth that does not roar, but hums softly through layers of ice and water, reshaping them day by day, year by year for eons. Europa teaches us that warmth does not need fire, that life's energy can come not from the sky, but from the ground, that even in the coldest, darkest places, a slow, patient force may still be at work, preparing a world for something more. Now let us return once more to the surface of Europa, not to leave its warmth behind, but to carry its quiet lesson with us. Beneath the miles of cold and silence lies an ocean not held in stasis, but stirred by invisible hands. The warmth below zero has been working for billions of years, reshaping ice, stirring water, and writing slow stories into the moon's body. And as we look back toward Earth from this distant place, we begin to see that warmth does not have one single voice. It can be fire, it can be sunlight, but it can also be motion, steady, tireless, and ancient. Tidal heating, the force that fuels Europa's hidden ocean, is more than just an explanation for melted ice. It is a symbol of patience. It tells us that even when energy is faint and indirect, it can still be powerful. The slow pull of Jupiter's gravity, repeated over countless orbits, has created a system where water is not frozen into silence but kept fluid, kept moving. This warmth is not a burst, not a flame. It is a hum, a pressure, a rhythm so slow we might miss it if we weren't listening carefully. And yet it has changed a world. This warmth has shaped Europa's past and is likely shaping its present. Through it, ice cracks, crust shifts, and the ocean breathes. Each movement allows the deep sea to interact with the surface, to share chemistry, to allow energy to flow. And with that flow comes the possibility for life. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that endures. Microbial, simple, hidden life that asks only for a chance. The warmth below zero does not promise life, but it refuses to close the door. Future missions may land on Europa, dig gently into its crust, or pass through plumes erupting from beneath. Instruments will test the saltiness of the ice, the trace gases in the vapour, the heat radiating from cracks and fractures. Each measurement will carry a deeper question. Could warmth like this be enough? And every time the answer is maybe, our curiosity grows stronger. Because a world warmed only by its own orbit, by its own movement, is not just fascinating. It is familiar. It tells us that life does not need to begin in brightness, it can begin in quiet. And perhaps beyond Europa, this lesson carries farther still. Other icy moons, like Enceladus, Titan and Ganymede, also feel the squeeze of gravity. They too may hold oceans stirred by the same invisible process. If tidal heating can create warmth beneath one frozen crust, perhaps it can do so beneath many. If one moon can hold a sea warmed without sunlight, maybe others can as well. And if one of those seas holds life, the universe becomes a little more full, not louder, not busier, but deeper, more connected, more open to the idea that existence is not fragile but persistent. Europa reminds us that warmth can come from unlikely places. That movement creates heat. That pressure, even in darkness, can give rise to something new. The warmth below zero is not just a scientific concept, it is a metaphor. It is the quiet hope that what seems too cold, too distant, or too still may yet hold surprises. It is the belief that life does not wait only in places like Earth, but may be gently rising molecule by molecule in seas we have never touched. So we leave Europa now, not with answers, but with wonder. We carry with us the image of a cold moon, glowing faintly under Jupiter's light, hiding an ocean beneath its crust, and a furnace deep inside that never flickers. We carry the idea that in the universe warmth is never just fire, it is motion, time, and the promise of possibility. When we dream of reaching Europa's ocean, we imagine ships, drills, and data. But long before we send life beneath the ice, we must send eyes. Eyes that do not blink, do not sleep, and do not forget. These eyes come in the form of machines, built not with glass and nerve, but with sensors, circuits, and hope. They are explorers born of questions, crafted on Earth, launched through space, and aimed at a world we cannot yet touch. What these machines see will shape what we believe, and what they might find beneath Europa's crust could change the meaning of distance itself. It begins above the surface in orbit, where spacecraft fly close and fast, scanning every ridge and crack. The Europa Clipper, a mission designed by NASA, is one of these watchers. It will not land, it will not dig, but it will circle again and again, its instruments trained on the ice below. It will carry radar that can see through kilometers of frozen shell, mapping the hidden layers like a blind artist sketching with touch. It will carry spectrometers that read color not as beauty but as chemistry. It will smell for gases. It will feel for magnetism. It will listen for changes in gravity. Every pass will collect more than just data. It will gather whispers of a world trying to be heard, and it may be enough. Already telescopes from Earth have spotted signs that Europa breathes. Plumes of vapor spraying briefly into space from unseen cracks, caught not with cameras but with patience. These moments are rare, but they are not random. They tell us that the ocean is not locked away forever. It speaks in soughs, in mists, in molecules flung into the sky. If Europa Clipper can fly through one of these plumes, it may taste the ocean without ever touching the sea. It may find salts, organics, even pieces of molecules that life needs, pieces that hint quietly that something stirs below. But the dream does not stop there. Someday we may land, gently, cautiously on Europa's fragile crust. The first landers will not carry people. They will be robots, small and strong, built to survive cold, radiation and silence. They will dig into the surface, scrape away the layers, and analyze every grain of ice. They will look for signs of contact, places where the ocean may have touched the crust, places where life, if it exists, may have left its trace. And if we dare to go further, we may drill, not with violence but with care, melting slowly downward through the ice, using heat and pressure, sending probes inch by inch toward the sea. These machines will not rush. They will take months, even years, to descend. But when they reach the water, they will swim, not fast, but deliberately. They will move like jellyfish, like gentle fish made of metal and wire, watching for temperature changes, testing for chemicals, searching for patterns too precise to be random. They will drift in silence, guided not by eyes, but by curiosity. These machines will not just gather knowledge, they will expand imagination. They will tell us what Europa sounds like when the ice cracks deep below, what it smells like where a plume begins, what it feels like to touch salt that has not seen sunlight for 1 billion years. They will make maps of places no human hand has traced, and in their quiet way they will become our first ambassadors to an alien sea. Because before we can belong to that world, even for a moment, we must first observe, we must first listen. The eyes that wait beneath the ice are not ours, but they are part of us, built from our questions, launched by our longing, and guided by the belief that even the most distant ocean deserves to be seen. Let us move deeper into the journey of the machines that may one day swim through Europa's ocean. These explorers will not have lungs to breathe or hands to feel, but they will be built to sense, to think, to adapt in silence. Beneath the crushing weight of the ice, in a world without light, they will become the first eyes to see what no human ever has. And they will not be alone. Each machine will be part of a network, a conversation of tools and instruments stretching across millions of miles, from mission control on Earth to the freezing liquid heart of an alien moon. Before a swimmer can glide through Europa's ocean, a path must be opened. This task will likely fall to a probe, a lander that melts its way down, not by drilling with force but by using heat to part the ice layer by layer. The descent will be slow. It could take months, even years. The probe will need to monitor its environment constantly, adjusting to changes in pressure, avoiding fractures, stopping when it must to send signals home. Every meter it travels will be measured, documented, remembered. Because once it is gone into the ice, there is no bringing it back. The only way forward is deeper. As the ice gives way to liquid, the probe may release a small swimmer, like a silver fish built of sensors and steel. This vehicle, free from the tunnel that brought it here, will float into a darkness thicker than night. Its lights will be the first to shine in those waters, its sensors the first to feel the gentle tug of Europa's tides. It will not race, it will drift. It will observe the temperature, the pressure, the density of the water. It will search for currents, for gradients, for minerals that rise from the floor or fall from the ceiling of ice above. It will scan for life, but more than that, it will scan for structure, for patterns too ordered to be accidents. If the ocean is calm, the swimmer will be alone in the silence. But if there are vents, ridges, or volcanic features, it may find areas of warmth, zones where heat and chemical energy combine. Here it will search for the ingredients of life, carbon compounds, ammonia, sulfur, not because they prove life exists, but because they mean life is possible. And that possibility is enough to send a signal home, a message not of certainty but of wonder. Even before we reach that moment, the spacecraft above, the Clipper, the orbiters that follow, will give us reasons to try. They will map Europa's magnetic field, which dances each time the moon turns. That dance is shaped by the salty ocean inside and the way electricity moves through it. By studying these changes, we can learn how deep the ocean is, how salty, how active. These are not guesses, they are conversations. The ocean speaks in magnetism and gravity, in radiation bouncing off its icy shell. And we are learning to listen. Some machines will not go to Europa at all, they will stay in labs, simulating its ocean. Scientists on Earth already build chambers where pressure is high, sunlight is absent, and the chemistry matches what we expect in that distant sea. In those labs, they grow bacteria, test reactions, and imagine what it would take to survive. What we learn in these chambers may shape the swimmers we send later, teaching us what to look for, what to protect against, and how to recognize something truly alien when it drifts across the sensor screen. These preparations take time. They require patience, funding, and the belief that even if we find nothing, the effort was still worthwhile. Because these machines are not built just to find life. They are built to understand the conditions that allow life to begin, to measure habitability, to trace the invisible boundary between a world that could support life and one that does not. And in that tracing, we learn more about our own world too, about how rare or how common the gift of life may truly be. The eyes that wait beneath the ice may not blink or dream, but they are watching, they are learning. And soon they may carry back to us the first images of a world untouched by light, a world where life might glow or drift or simply exist without needing to be seen. Now let us imagine the moment, the quiet, slow unfolding when the first swimmer finally touches Europa's ocean floor. It may be a small machine no larger than a suitcase, gliding through darkness so complete that even its own lights are swallowed within a few meters. It will drift downward, watching every reading with calm precision, sensing slight changes in pressure, capturing tiny particles that dance in the cold current. And then, without sound or ceremony, it may reach rock. Not Earth's rock, not warmed by volcanoes or shaped by rivers, but Europa's seafloor, silent, mineral-rich, and untouched since the beginning of time. In that moment, the swimmer becomes more than a tool. It becomes a witness. Everything it sees, feels, and measures will become part of the greatest story ever told about this distant moon. Its cameras, if light can help, will scan the textures of stone. Its arms may scoop small amounts of sediment, testing for compounds built not by randomness, but by repetition. It will look for signs of stability, molecules that hold together in patterns that hint at self-organization, at memory, at life's quiet hum. It may find nothing. It may find salt and rock, silence and shadow. But even that silence will speak. It will tell us how matter behaves without sunlight. It will reveal what minerals rise when heat meets water in the dark. And if there are signs, faint traces of amino acids, chains of carbon curled just so, a glimmer of cell-like structure, it may tell us something far greater, that the universe does not need Earth to begin life, that it only needs conditions, motion, and time. In the years that follow, more swimmers may arrive. Some may be faster. Some may carry new tools, new questions. Together they will begin to build a map, not just of Europa's topography, but of its chemistry, its warmth, its science. Each new machine will expand the picture, and perhaps one day they will find more than structure. Perhaps they will find movement, not mechanical but biological, a drift that resists the current, a glow that fades and returns, a particle that divides just slightly again and again. Life not imagined but observed. And back on Earth, that discovery would ripple through every field, every question, every child staring up at the stars. Because if life can grow in Europa's dark, it can grow elsewhere. Not just on this moon, but on others. Not just in oceans, but beneath the crust of asteroids, in clouds of distant planets, in places we once called dead. Life, we would learn, is not the miracle. It is the rhythm, the pattern, the answer the universe gives again and again when the conditions are kind. But even without that discovery, even without the shimmer of a new organism, the eyes beneath the ice have value. They teach us how to explore gently, how to listen before speaking, how to wonder without expecting reward. They remind us that reaching out into space is not only about finding others, it's about learning who we are and how wide the story of life might stretch. So let us continue to imagine these machines, not as cold, lifeless tools, but as vessels for our deepest questions. They carry the dreams of every person who has looked up and asked, "Are we alone?" They travel farther than we can. They see what we cannot. And they return not only with data, but with perspective. In the dark beneath Europa's crust, the swimmer moves on, slow, careful, hopeful, and in its quiet journey, it carries the first heartbeat of human presence in a world that has never known us, not to conquer, but to understand, not to change, but to see, to open our eyes to the possibility that life, no matter how small, no matter how strange, may already be waiting in the cold. Hope is a quiet thing. It does not always shine or sing. Sometimes it waits in silence beneath a shell of ice, beneath a sky too far from any sun. On Europa, hope takes the shape of stillness, an ocean wrapped in quiet, a surface scarred with ancient lines, and a possibility that life exists where we cannot see. Even without proof we look, even without sound we listen. Because deep within this cold and distant moon lies a story we are still learning how to read. A story not just of salt and water, but of patience, of something that may have waited for billions of years without asking to be found. Europa is not easy. It is cold, far, and wrapped in radiation. Its ocean is hidden by ice that stretches for miles. But we return to it again and again, not with footsteps, but with questions. And those questions are not small. They are among the oldest we carry. Could life begin without distant sunlight? Could it survive in silence? Could it rise in a place where time moves slowly and the sky never opens? These are not the questions of science alone. They are the questions of wonder of hope that whispers instead of shouts. This moon is not warm, it does not glow with fire, but beneath its crust heat flows gently, born of motion and gravity. The ocean there is not a roaring sea, it is a sleeping one, vast, dark, and perhaps filled with slow currents, drifting minerals, and the soft shapes of chemistry trying to become biology. We do not know if life is there, we only know that life could be, and that could is enough to make us look harder, send machines, and imagine futures where answers reach us not in voices, but in signals carried across the void. When we send missions to Europa, we are not only reaching for another world, we are reflecting on our own. For every place that seems impossible becomes a mirror, and Europa, in its distance and quiet, reflects something true about how we hope. We hope not because we are certain, we hope because the universe is vast, and we are learning that life, delicate, strange, and stubborn, may not be rare. It may be the natural outcome of time, energy, and patience, even here, even in a world with no land, no sunlight, no bird song, even in a place where life, if it exists, never saw a star. Europa holds a kind of stillness that invites us to listen, not with ears, but with attention. Its cracked surface tells of motion, of change, of forces that have shaped it from within. Those lines are not just scars, they are records, proof that the ocean moves, that heat rises, that something long ago and maybe still today pushes outward from the deep. And that is what life does. It pushes, it rises, slowly against odds. It begins without fanfare. It waits, sometimes for eons, sometimes unnoticed, but always reaching, always repeating, always becoming. Europa, if it holds life, may be teaching us this lesson in the most distant and difficult way. And even if it does not, it still shows us the landscape of potential. It shows us that not all life begins in light. Some life perhaps begins us in the dark, with only motion, minerals, and the faint warmth of a patient moon. Let us stay here for a while, within this idea of waiting, of hope that is not loud but constant. Europa's ocean is not a place of rushing rivers or crashing waves. It is a slow ocean, one that has never felt the wind, never heard thunder. And yet it moves, gently, deeply over time. Its tides rise and fall with the pull of Jupiter, a rhythm so steady it becomes a kind of heartbeat. We cannot see this motion directly, but we see its effects in the lines across the ice, in the plumes that breathe upward, in the magnetic wobbles that shift ever so slightly with each orbit. These are Europa's signs, its quiet messages, and in them we see a moon that is not dead but dreaming. Scientists have studied what it would take for life to exist in such a place. Not lush forests or flashing schools of fish, but tiny, hardy forms, simple cells that cling to rock, feed on minerals, and divide slowly, if at all. Life that asks little, but persists. On Earth, we have found it in our own deepest oceans, near hydrothermal vents where no sunlight reaches. There, in the blackness, bacteria grow without plants or photosynthesis. Powered by the chemicals alone, they feed on hydrogen, iron, sulfur. They build tiny ecosystems that thrive where once we thought nothing could live. If Europa has similar vents, cracks in its ocean floor where heat escapes and chemicals pour out, then it may have similar possibilities. These vents could create pockets of warmth and richness, islands of habitability in a cold sea. And even if they are rare, even if they form slowly and change over millennia, they would offer the basic ingredients: water, energy, and time. Life, as we understand it, needs nothing more. What would such life look like? Not like anything we know. It might not have eyes because there is no light to see. It might not have colour because there is no sun to reflect. It might be shaped only by chemistry and necessity, small, soft-bodied, and slow. It might live its entire life drifting near a vent, never knowing the ice above or the rock beyond. And yet, it would be alive, a whisper in the dark, a sign that the universe can build biology without sunlight, without land, without the things we once believed were essential. And if we find it, or even if we find signs that it once existed, it will change more than science. It will change how we see ourselves. Because it would mean that life is not a miracle but a process, not a rare accident but a natural unfolding. That where there is warmth and chemistry, life tries. And if it tries on Europa, it may try elsewhere too, on Enceladus, Titan, Pluto. On planets we have never seen, on moons that do not shine, The galaxy would feel different then, not empty, but full of quiet experiments of oceans waiting in the dark. Even if we do not find life, the search itself is part of the story. The machines we send, the questions we ask, the patience we show, all of it reveals what kind of species we are. We seek connection, we hope without proof, we reach across space not just to explore but to belong. Europa becomes part of that journey. A moon we may never walk upon, but one that has already shaped how we think. Its ice is a puzzle, its ocean is a question, and its silence is an invitation. To explore Europa is to listen. To the science, yes, but also to the wonder. To believe that life may take forms we do not yet recognize in places we once ignored. That hope does not need light to grow. It needs only curiosity, time, and a willingness to follow the faintest signs. Europa gives us those signs, in its fractured shell, in its shifting tides, in its promise of water deep below. It asks us not for answers, but for attention. Not for belief, but for care. And we, slowly, are learning how to give both. Now we come to the quiet end of Europa's story, not an ending of answers, but a closing of questions with gentleness and grace. This moon wrapped in ice has not shouted its secrets. It has whispered them through shifting cracks, through the warmth of tidal breaths, through oceans that sigh beneath silence. And in listening we have changed. What began as curiosity has deepened into something else. A kind of reverence for places we do not yet understand and for lives that may be unfolding in forms we have never seen. If life exists beneath Europa's crust, it may be the most patient kind of life ever imagined. It may have started slow, evolved slower still, shaped not by light but by movement, by salt, by heat that never rises high enough to boil. These living things, if they are there, do not wait for us. They do not know we look. They continue, perhaps as they always have, drifting, feeding, dividing when the energy allows. Their world is a soft rhythm of survival, long, undisturbed and hidden. But the fact that we imagine them, that we build machines to reach them, that we reshape our dreams around them, is a testament to something profoundly human. We long to connect, even in the dark. And if we find nothing, no cell, no molecule, no pattern beyond nature's chance, we will still have gained. Because Europa has taught us how to wonder differently. Not in search of certainty, but in search of possibility. It has reminded us that the absence of light is not the absence of meaning, and that silence does not mean stillness. We look at its surface now and no longer see a frozen moon. We see a breathing system, a place of tides and motion, of hidden seas and ancient chemistry, a place that may never speak in ways we expect, and yet still tells us something vital. The universe holds more than we know, and it holds it gently. This idea, this dream that Europa may harbour life, is not only for scientists. It is for anyone who's ever wondered what lies beyond the stars. It is for those who believe that every drop of water, wherever it is found, carries a question. For those who understand that distance is not a barrier to meaning, and that the act of searching, even across billions of miles, is an act of hope. Europa does not need to prove anything to us. Its very existence, its ocean, its warmth, its timeless stillness, is enough to expand the borders of our imagination. We often think of life as something rare and fragile, clinging to the thin blue line of Earth's biosphere. But Europa suggests a different view. It hints that life may be resilient, persistent, eager to begin again wherever the conditions allow, not loud, not complex, not vast, but present. And if life can begin in Europa's ocean, then life may not be the exception in the cosmos. It may be the rule, a quiet rule written in salt and pressure, repeated wherever oceans meet energy, wherever chemistry stirs gently in the dark. In the end, whether we find life there or not, Europa has already given us something sacred. It has given us a mirror, a way to look outward and see ourselves not as isolated, but as part of a wider, deeper, stranger story. A story that includes worlds we have never walked, seas we have never touched, and silences we have only just begun to hear. In that story we are listeners, observers, dreamers. We are not the centre. We are the search. So as we close this final chapter, let us remember the quiet of Europa. Not as emptiness, but as presence. Let us carry its patience with us. Let us hold its stillness as a kind of wisdom, and let us return again and again, not only with machines and missions, but with awe. For in the frozen ocean of a moon wrapped in shadow we found something close to faith, not in what is seen, but in what might still become. In the quiet corners of the cosmos, where planets sleep and moons drift like ancient memories, there exists a place of strange beauty, a world of salt and stillness, of hidden tides and shadowed breath. But today, we turn not to the sea itself, not to what lies beneath the crust, but to the sky above and the ice in between. Because Europa, though locked in cold and distance, is not forgotten. It speaks not just to scientists and machines, but to dreamers, and its dream is this, that even the coldest place may hold a future, that even in the deep something may awaken, that even silence can be full of purpose. Europa's ice is a canvas, marked with fractures, streaked with lines, curled like frozen waves beneath a starless tide. These lines are not random. They are echoes of movement, memory, change. Beneath them we imagine not just water, but motion, and above them we send our machines, not simply to record, but to act. We prepare for more than observation. We prepare for return, not to recover something lost, but to reach for something new. In laboratories on Earth, engineers sculpt the tools of this return. Robotic arms built to taste ancient ice. Swimmers designed to navigate darkness. Instruments trained to detect whispers of chemistry and warmth. Each machine is a thought made real, a possibility turned into shape and wire. These are not weapons or monuments. They are gentle hands, crafted with care to touch a place no living thing has touched before. And as we build, we imagine, what if Europa holds something more than water and rock? What if the future of our curiosity lies beneath its shell? The road ahead will not be short. First, we must fly. We must launch across space with precision and patience, slinging past planets, gathering speed. Then we must arrive, not with force, but with focus. A spacecraft will orbit, measure, map. It will fly low over cracks that may open again. It will listen for the sigh of plumes, taste the air for salt and sulfur, and all the while it will teach us where to land, where to dig, where to begin. And begin we must. The surface is not smooth. It is rough and old and new all at once, a puzzle of broken plates and ridges. But somewhere within it lies a path, a place where the crust thins, a point where the ocean reaches close, and there we will land, not to stay, but to send something deeper. A probe, shaped to melt its way down, will descend slowly, using heat and patience, not drills. It will carry with it another shape, a swimmer, folded small, waiting for the moment when it may glide free into the black. This swimmer will be different from anything we've sent before. It will not search for mountains or moons. It will search for texture, temperature, taste. It will ask only, what is here? What moves? What changes? What repeats? It will not carry expectations. It will carry questions. And that is what makes it powerful, because in its questions, it carries the soul of exploration. It carries us. Europa's future is not yet written. The ice may be too thick, the ocean too calm, the chemistry too simple, but we go anyway, because the going is itself a kind of answer. It tells us that we do not stop at light, at warmth, at ease. We go to where the silence is, and we ask if it has anything more to say. That is the return we prepare for. Not a return from Europa, but a return to what made us look up in the first place. Let us continue from this point of return, not as a destination reached, but as a process unfolding. The machines we build, the paths we chart, the questions we carry, they are all part of a return not just to Europa, but to a deeper part of ourselves. A return to that timeless desire to know what lies beyond, to discover what exists in places we have never touched. In Europa, we do not see the past, we see what could be, and so the return we imagine is not only physical, it is emotional, it is imaginative. It is a journey toward the unknown, driven by hope that something unfamiliar may still share something essential. Once the swimmer enters the ocean, its movements will be slow, cautious, deliberate. There will. In those plumes of warm fluid, chemistry will be happening. Sulfur mixing with metal, carbon touching hydrogen, minerals dissolving and forming again. The swimmer will taste this water, not for sweetness, but for signs of something alive. It will look for chains of carbon, for molecules that align too well to be random, for the signature of replication. It may not find life, but it may find readiness. And in that readiness, we will see something almost as rare, a world where life might bloom, if only given a chance. Above the ocean, the lander will continue its quiet work. It will sample the ice, study the radiation, map the surface as it changes under strain. And back on Earth, the data will begin to arrive, bits of meaning wrapped in distance. Scientists will comb through each file, not seeking miracles, but searching for stories. Stories of how the ice grew, how the ocean breathes, how energy moves without flame or storm. And in these stories, Europa will come alive not as a place where we once looked, but as a place that now speaks. The return is not only about finding new things, it is also about becoming new. When we send a machine across 500 million miles to ask a question, we are not only trying to change what we know, we are changing how we think. We begin to see the cosmos not as a cold, indifferent place, but as a vast network of chances. We begin to imagine life not as a spark struck in one lucky corner, but as a pattern waiting to repeat. We return to Europa not to prove we are alone, but to ask, gently, humbly, if we are not. And Europa, through every fracture in its ice, through every magnetic pulse and distant plume, answers not with certainty, but with invitation. An invitation to keep looking, to keep sending eyes and ears, not because we expect applause, but because the act of searching is itself the thread that connects us to something larger. In this way, Europa becomes a kind of mirror. We see in it our own questions, stretched across space. We see our longing for contact, our patience, our belief in the unseen. These missions, slow, careful, and deeply fragile, remind us that exploration is not conquest. It is care. It is listening. It is sending a machine into the dark not to harvest, but to witness. And when that machine returns its findings, we will not be richer in gold or power, but in understanding of what kind of worlds can exist, what kind of life might arise, what kind of explorers we want to be. This is the essence of return, not going back to what we once knew, but going forward into what we are still learning to imagine. Europa offers that forward path, a frozen moon with a living ocean, a sealed shell with something moving underneath. It does not need us, but we are drawn to it because it reminds us that mystery is not something to fear. It is something to follow, carefully, quietly, all the way to the sea. And now, in this final part of Europa's story, we pause not to conclude but to reflect. Because the return we dream of machines diving through dark oceans, of plumes breathing secrets into space, of molecules drifting patiently through salt and silence, is not only a journey outward, it is a journey inward. Europa does not just stretch the boundaries of astronomy, it stretches the boundaries of imagination. It teaches us that the farthest places may not be empty, that the coldest places may not be still, and that what seems lifeless may, in time, surprise us with quiet persistence. Imagine standing beside the machine that made it to the ocean. It does not look like a ship. It does not roar or shine. It glows softly, hums gently, and listens constantly. Its arms move with care. Its sensors sweep the dark with reverence. It is not there to disrupt, but to witness, to ask, what has this ocean made in all its silence and time? And even if the machine finds no creature, no cell, not even the echo of biology, it will still have succeeded, because it will have touched something untouched. It will have searched where no one could reach, and in doing so it will have honoured the question itself. In this way, Europa changes us. It makes us remember that discovery is not about certainty. It is about wonder, about following the faintest trace, the smallest clue, and letting it guide us somewhere unfamiliar. Europa is not dazzling. It is not loud. It offers no easy miracles, but it offers possibility, the slow, beautiful kind that takes time and patience to understand. Its surface does not invite us in, but it allows us to watch, to measure, to prepare, and maybe someday to meet. This moon may never host a colony, may never see footsteps in its frost. It may always remain distant, but its presence shapes our future, not by what it gives, but by what it makes us ask. And this is what makes Europa so profound. It does not exist for us, but it includes us in its story anyway. Every orbit it makes around Jupiter is a silent testament to motion, to gravity, to a system that holds secrets without shouting. And as we continue to explore, as our instruments get finer, as our questions get braver, we come closer, not just to answers, but to understanding. The return we dream of is not about bringing something back in a box. It is about bringing back perspective, a new way of seeing the universe. A new appreciation for what life may be, not just here, but anywhere. To find even one sign, one molecule shaped by life's hand, one chain of atoms that repeats too perfectly, that would echo across every continent, every field, every soul that ever wondered if we were alone. But even without that sign, we are not empty, because the journey itself has made us fuller. And maybe, just maybe, Europa is watching too. Not with eyes, not with intent, but as a participant in a shared moment. A moment when a small blue planet sent its thoughts to a smaller, colder one. When a world that breathes air reached toward a world that breathes tides. And between them something new was born. Not life perhaps, but meaning. A connection written in salt and motion and the endless patience of the sea. So let us return not from Europa, but to the beginning, with more questions than answers, and with more hope than ever. Let us carry this moon with us, in every plan, every mission, every young voice asking what lies beyond. Let us hold its currents not as emptiness, but as invitation, because Europa waits, not for us, not for recognition, but because that is what the universe does. It waits, it stirs, it becomes, and in its becoming, it gives us a place to wonder and to dream again. There is something both haunting and beautiful about watching a world from far away, knowing it spins and shifts without ever knowing your name. Europa is like that. A moon that does not call, but does not hide. A moon that reflects not sunlight, but questions. And among its most quiet reflections is this. What does it mean when a world does not welcome us, yet holds something of ourselves? When its ice bears no footprints, yet its ocean may carry the same salt we taste in our own blood. This is not the story of discovery. It is the story of waiting for a door that has not yet opened, but may. Europa has never been ours. It has never needed us, but in its guidance we have seen echoes of chemistry that mirrors our own, of tides that beat like a heart too slow to hear, of water that moves in darkness, just as it did when life first sparked on Earth. In this way, Europa becomes more than a place. It becomes a possibility, and it is through that lens we must see it, not as a world to take, but as a world to learn from, a world that reminds us we are not always the centre of the story. For centuries we believed life required light, that without sunshine nothing could grow, but Europa has challenged that idea. It whispers of an ocean where sunlight has never reached, where warmth rises from friction instead of fire, where energy flows not from the sky, but from the deep. And in that whisper we hear a new version of life, one not bound by surface or sky, but shaped by patience and pressure and time. Life perhaps not as we know it, but as it might be in the far corners of possibility. What makes this idea so powerful is not certainty, but potential. We have not found life on Europa, we may never find it. But everything we learn, the thickness of the ice, the salt in the plumes, the motion of magnetic fields, tells us the same thing. If life could exist there, then life is not rare. Life is not fragile, life is not bound by Earth. And that is enough to reshape how we see the universe, even if Europa's ocean remains unseen. We often think of exploration as conquest, but Europa invites something else. It invites reverence, it invites humility, it invites the kind of curiosity that does not rush, that does not assume but listens. Every crack in the ice is a page, every plume is a line of dialogue, every chemical trace is a syllable in a story not written for us, but available if we're willing to read. And what we've read so far has already changed us. We have learned that water exists in more places than once imagined, that warmth can come from motion, that even a frozen moon can pulse with life's ingredients. These are not small lessons, they are foundations. They tell us to keep looking, not just outward, but inward. Because what we seek on Europa is not only alien life, it is also understanding of where we came from, of how fragile and stubborn life can be, of what kind of universe we are part of. So we watch Europa still, from telescopes, from orbiters, from data gathered piece by piece. We have not touched its ocean, but we have touched its meaning, and that is a beginning. Let us now move further into this unfolding idea, not just of a moon and its ocean, but of the kind of searching that stretches across space, time, and silence. Europa is not the only world we have studied. It's not the only place we have dreamed about. But there is something different here, something about the stillness beneath the ice, the pressure of hidden tides, the possibility of ancient water untouched by light. It calls to a different part of us, not the part that wants to conquer, but the part that wants to understand. Because to study Europa is not to chase answers, it is to ask deeper and quieter questions. When scientists speak of habitability, they do not mean comfort, they mean possibility. They look for water, for energy, for chemistry that doesn't stop. Europa offers all three, not as a gift, but as a coincidence of motion and structure. It has water in abundance, perhaps more than Earth. It has heat, not from a core of fire, but from the stretching of its own body, pulled gently by Jupiter's gravity. And it has chemistry, salts and minerals drawn from stone, stirred in darkness, shaped by time. These things are not proof of life, but they are proof that the ingredients of life are not limited to one planet, one climate, one sun. This is the quiet revolution Europa offers, not in headlines, but in slow shifts of thinking. It suggests that life does not need what we once thought essential, that it might begin in darkness, thrive in isolation, adapt to pressures and conditions we barely understand. And if it can do that here, if it can form, survive, or even flicker in Europa's sea, then we must begin to see life as a universal pattern, not a rare miracle, but an outcome waiting to happen. There is another side to this, the emotional truth of exploration. We often speak of missions in terms of technology, funding, planning, but beneath all that are people, scientists, engineers, artists, thinkers, who devote years, sometimes lifetimes, to asking questions that may not be answered in their time. The Europa Clipper, the next great machine we will send, is not just a spacecraft. It is the shape of decades of patience. It carries the fingerprints of thousands of hands, and when it flies, it will carry not just instruments, but the hope that the universe is deeper and kinder than we imagined. Hope matters, not because it guarantees results, but because it sustains the journey. We may never land on Europa, we may never break through the ice, we may never see life with our own eyes, but still we send missions, still we ask, still we believe that to explore is better than to assume, that to search is better than to dismiss. And that is why Europa holds such power, not because it promises answers, but because it reminds us that questions are sacred. We do not know how long Europa's ocean has existed. Perhaps 4 billion years, sealed beneath ice, shaped only by gravity and salt. Perhaps longer, and we do not know if anything has stirred in it, if any strand of molecule ever linked to another, if any cell ever formed, if any breath was ever drawn. But we know this, the possibility exists, and that possibility, in all its silence, changes the shape of everything. Europa reminds us that some of the most important things are slow, that oceans can wait, that life, if it exists, does not always shout or bloom or build. Sometimes it drifts, sometimes it repeats, sometimes it simply is, and even if we never find it, the search teaches us how to look, gently, thoroughly, with wonder and with care. Now let us close this chapter not with a final answer, but with a soft return to the beginning, a return to the dream, the distance and the quiet wonder that made us look toward Europa in the first place. For in all that we have imagined, all that we have measured, all that we have planned, there is something deeper than science alone. There is the feeling that the universe may be more alive than it appears, that within the silence of cold oceans and the stillness of ice, something tender might be unfolding. We may never touch the ocean of Europa directly. We may never see what it holds or learn all that it hides. But we will keep sending our questions. We will keep building machines, not as tools of conquest, but as instruments of reverence. Our spacecraft do not arrive with demands. They arrive with attention, with sensors open, with antennas raised, with gentle curiosity etched into every circuit. And Europa, whether it holds life or not, will continue to respond, not with words, but with the quiet language of motion and magnetism, of salt and fracture, of breathless time. That is the heart of the search, not the promise of finding, but the promise of looking, of knowing that the act itself is worth the years, the effort, the silence. Europa will remain cold, it will remain distant, but in the space between us and that frozen moon, we find something closer than we expected. We find that exploration is not only about discovery, it is about becoming more patient, more aware, more willing to dwell in the unknown. And if one day a machine dips through a plume and catches something small, an organic molecule, a repeating structure, a chain of atoms shaped in just the right way, then the quiet will shift. The silence will gain weight. Because in that tiny signal we will hear not just Europa, but all the other world like it. Moons orbiting distant planets, oceans sealed in ice, places we have never named but now know might breathe. Life, we would learn, is not alone on a single rock in a single star's light. It is a pattern, a whisper that repeats wherever the elements allow. But even without that molecule, without that glimmer of proof, the journey continues. Because Europa teaches us to wait with purpose, to listen to quietness without needing noise. It teaches us that the story of life is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is a slow unfolding of conditions, a patient gathering of ingredients, a silence that is not empty but full of waiting. And perhaps most of all, it reminds us of our own story. That we too came from oceans, that we too began in dark waters stirred by warmth and time. That even now we are carried by curiosity, across distances, across generations, across silence. Europa is not just a moon, it is a mirror. It shows us what we value, what we long for, and what we are willing to pursue, even without guarantees. So we look back once more at the ice, and at the lines stretched across its surface, at the vapour that sometimes escapes into space, and we say nothing. We simply watch, we wait, we wonder, because that is how all great stories begin, not with certainty, but with a question. And Europa, with all its frozen quiet, might just be the most beautiful question the universe has ever asked. Before telescopes, before rockets, before maps of other planets were etched into textbooks, humans would look at the night sky and wonder if anything looked back, not with eyes or thoughts, but with presence. That quiet sense that something else, somewhere far beyond the trees and mountains, might exist in the dark. Today, we know more. We know of planets circling other stars. We know of moons that hide oceans beneath their icy shells. And yet, that old question remains. Is the universe lonely or just quiet? Among the most poetic places to ask that question is Europa, not because it is loud, but because it reflects the mystery back with stillness. In this stillness, one begins to think of echoes, not just sounds, but reflections, of chemistry, of structure, of processes that repeat. Europa is full of echoes of our oceans, of our tectonic shifts, of our tides and heat and salt. But among the most curious echoes is the possibility that its story is not unique. That somewhere across the great quiet of space other Europas exist. Moons with shells of ice, with oceans beneath, with slow heating from below and patient movement from within. And if that is true, then perhaps the story of Europa is not a single tale. It is part of a chorus. This chorus is not loud. It is made of frozen harmonies and unseen rhythms. But it carries a theme, the theme of life not as a lightning strike, but as a shadow that appears wherever water and time are allowed to settle. Life not only born in sunlight and air, but in darkness and pressure and distance. Europa is not a loud teacher, but it teaches this well. Life might not be fragile, it might be inevitable, not everywhere, but in more places than we ever dreamed. When scientists model Europa, they do not model it as a special case. Increasingly, they model it as a type, a kind of world that may be common in the universe. A water world, a world warmed by gravity, a world where the key elements, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur, could circulate in liquid, kept moving by tides and pressure, feeding the slow alchemy of biology. And if such a world exists here, it may exist elsewhere, under the crusts of Enceladus, Ganymede, Titan, or in far-off star systems where light is dim but orbits remain strong. This shifts something deep inside our sense of what life is, no longer a miracle on a single planet, but a pattern, a rhythm, a quiet structure waiting to repeat. Europa becomes not the exception, but the example, not the strange moon, but the mirror held up to other unseen worlds. and suddenly the search for life becomes less like finding a needle in a cosmic haystack, and more like learning to listen for a quiet, repeating song beneath layers of noise. Even the way Europa hides its ocean teaches us something important. On Earth, we often find life where we expect it, on the surface, under the sun, fed by plants and photosynthesis. But as we look deeper, we learn that life doesn't always bloom in the open. It flourishes in caves, in deep-sea vents, in glacial lakes locked beneath ice. It endures in dryness, in heat, in acid. Europa echoes this lesson with elegance. If life exists there, it is not waiting for attention. It is simply being quietly in the dark. And that teaches us to search not with spotlights, but with patience. So we listen, we measure. We build tools that can detect a sigh of vapour, a hint of organics, a rhythm in a magnetic field. Each piece of data is not just a clue to Europa, but to all the Europas we haven't found yet. Because if the echoes we see here are real, then Europa is not only its own world, it is a doorway, a threshold through which our imagination steps into a universe more alive than we knew. Let us move further now into the echo itself, into the deeper idea that Europa is not alone, not even in what it represents. Across the universe there may be countless other worlds where silence does not mean absence, and stillness does not mean lifelessness. If Europa, so cold and distant, can hold an ocean, then why not the next moon, the next exoplanet, the next nameless world beyond our reach? These worlds may never see starlight, but they may still hold chemistry, heat, and time. And that trio, chemistry, heat, and time, is a recipe. Not a guarantee, but a rhythm that life knows how to follow. Astronomers have already identified thousands of exoplanets orbiting distant stars. Some are gas giants, others rocky, some scorched, and some frozen. But among them, there are hints of planets with thick crusts, of moons with ice, of systems where tidal forces may stir the insides of silent spheres. The same dance that exists between Jupiter and Europa, a gravitational pull that stretches and warms, can happen anywhere. All that is needed is a large body, a moon in orbit, and time. The ingredients are simple, the possibilities endless. And so Europa becomes more than itself. It becomes a prototype, a lesson in planetary architecture. It teaches us that oceans can hide, that energy can flow invisibly, that worlds do not need to burn bright to be alive. It reshapes how we build our instruments. It influences how we aim our telescopes. It rewrites the models we use to estimate where life may occur. For decades, we searched for Earth-like planets, places with breathable air, with sunlight, with familiar landscapes. Now, Europa asks us to search differently, to listen not for voices in the light, but for heartbeats in the dark. This changes our relationship to distance. Before, we thought life had to be nearby, on Mars perhaps, or in the warm zones around other stars. But now we know that life could be hiding under ice, even in the far reaches of a solar system. If Europa's ocean holds anything living, then the same could be true on Enceladus, on Titan, on moons of Neptune, even on rogue planets cast adrift through interstellar space. A warm ocean beneath a frozen crust needs no sun, only gravity, motion, and patience, and these things are common. In this view, life becomes a thread that could run quietly through the universe, not flashy, not fast, but deep and enduring. It might not evolve into civilizations or build cities. It might remain small, microbial, invisible except under the finest instruments. But even that would be enough. Because to know we are not alone in the biological sense is to understand that we are not the centre of nature's attention. We are one chapter in a vast library of possible forms scattered across planets and moons like seeds blown into the wind. And it is this vision that Europa unlocks, not with proof, but with a shift in mindset. It makes life feel less like a single miracle, and more like a natural response to favourable conditions. It makes exploration feel less like a race and more like a conversation. It helps us move beyond the idea of aliens as beings who wave and speak and resemble us, toward the idea that life, real, profound, simple, might look like a film of bacteria under an ice sheet, living in a place that never knew light. Europa invites us to widen our definition of what is meaningful. Not just intelligence, not just complexity, but existence itself. A cell dividing slowly in the dark has value. A molecule repeating a pattern in the cold has meaning. These things remind us that the universe does not measure life in spectacle. It measures life in persistence, in motion, in echoes, and those echoes, though faint, are everywhere. If only we learn to hear them. Let us now return slowly and gently to where this story began, not in a laboratory or a spacecraft, but in the human heart, in the longing to know if we are truly alone. Europa, in all its icy quiet, has not answered that question, but it has changed the way we ask it. It has taught us to listen differently, to seek not just light but warmth in the cold, not just movement but stillness with purpose. It has reminded us that the universe may be filled with places that do not resemble Earth, but that still might cradle life in unfamiliar forms. And in doing so, it has widened the horizon of what we imagine and what we dare to hope. Europa's echoes do not fade as we drift away. They linger, in our instruments, in our missions, in the minds of children who read about icy moons and wonder what swims beneath. It is not only scientists who dream now, it is artists, storytellers, poets, those who see in Europa not a ball of ice, but a symbol of how quiet places can hold deep meaning. We carry these dreams into the future, not as fantasies but as motivations. Each echo we hear from Europa becomes a reason to look further, to try harder, to believe more deeply that discovery is not limited by distance. In time, we may send machines that melt through the ice, that swim through the ocean, that see firsthand what we have only imagined. They may find cells clinging to vents, or organic molecules drifting like pollen in the sea, or they may find nothing. But even if they return empty-handed, we will be richer, because we will have asked a beautiful question and listened with care. We will have stretched the boundaries of our science, our patience, and our imagination. And we will have learned that some questions are worth asking even if the answers are slow. This is what Europa gives us, not answers, but permission. Permission to wonder, permission to search where no one else thought to look, permission to redefine what a living world can be, and perhaps more importantly, it gives us a model for how to explore with respect. We do not blast through its crust or tear at its ocean. We glide, we melt, we listen. Europa teaches us that exploration can be soft, that curiosity can be gentle, that science can be a form of reverence, and through that reverence we may come to see ourselves differently. We are not just the inhabitants of Earth. We are the watchers of skies, the seekers of hidden oceans, the dreamers of possible lives. In Europa, we see a reflection not just of other worlds, but of who we might become. Not conquerors of space, but caretakers of its silence. Not owners of knowledge, but stewards of questions. So as we close the story of Europa's echoes, let us not rush away. Let us pause. Let us hold the stillness. Let us remember that this moon, though far and quiet, has spoken to us in a language older than words, a language of water, pressure, time, and patience. And let us promise silently and simply that we will continue to listen, that we will return, that we will carry the echo forward into every mission, every classroom, every moment of wonder. Not to end the question, but to keep it alive. Because in that echo, soft and steady beneath a shell of ancient ice, we have heard something extraordinary. Not life, perhaps, but the conditions for life. Not voices, but the space in which a voice could grow. And that space, that opening, is where everything begins.